There are a lot of new people around. So, good morning, everyone. Uh, Welcome to the second polygonal session. We we just started this series, basically to again like reconnect all our community and highlight some people who are doing very interesting work outside. And this is a like very spontaneous idea which just started with conversation with different people. Arvind, Kavya, Nalini, Vasudha. We just started with this. So these are just informal sessions. Like first we'll have a presentation from Sukanya. After that there will be a conversation. So we hope you will ask questions and make it interactive. So without taking much time, I'll highlight I Sukanya on the stage, and
Hello.
Sukanya is from LAD 2012 batch.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Sukanya, here you go. We'll go
Okay.
off from the stage.
All right. So, guys, thank you for joining in on a Sunday morning. And a very quick intro about me. See, I'm not going to share very heavy gyan over here. It's just my story that I'm going to share with you. And so, a quick intro about me is that I am a fashion and apparel pass out from the Gandhinagar, and I did my master's in lifestyle accessories from NID. And I think I'll just give you I'll just share the screen so that you can have a look at the presentation. All right. Okay. So I think to understand what I do, it's good to understand what the foundation is. So I've named it what drives us, because that is the basis of what I'm working on. So I've worked with 3 designers before, and you'll see there's a common link between all of them, is that they worked with sustainable design, they were working on the grassroots level, they were working with handmade techniques, ethical brands driven by Indian heritage. So that is the reason why I decided to join them and gain some experience. And that is, I knew that this is going to be the basis for my label when I start something on my own. So I would call myself as an ethical label with tradition and transition at its core, because we are dealing with traditional techniques, we're dealing with traditional ways of working, and we want to see how it comes into the contemporary scenario, like how it translates today. So I was very clear in the beginning that I don't want to follow trends, because I wanted to work with products that are long lasting. So I didn't want it to go out of fashion after the trend is gone, and I want people to wear them again and again later on and pass it on to the next generation if they want. So I think quality also plays a very important role here, that I was very sure that I don't want to compromise on quality of my products, even though it meant that it would increase the costs a bit, but I was very sure that I don't want to compromise on that aspect. I knew it will be slow design, because it will be handmade, and ethical in the sense that I was very clear that I wanted to, the craftsmen working with me, they would have an ease of work. They would want their payments on time. So there have been times that we initially did not have the money to pay. So I would have to borrow money from someone, my parents, but I made sure that I paid them on time, because that makes a lot of sense when you're dealing with people at the grassroots level. And it builds a kind of trust with them, with the craftsmen, and it comes with time that, there is this trust factor between me and the craftsmen, and they can depend on me for work, and that they know that the payments will be cleared on time. So I wanted it to be a sustainable brand, and I wanted a blend of old and new. Now, there's one thing that I keep asking myself whenever I'm working, is constantly keep asking myself that what value am I creating for the industry? It's an intangible value, basically. So if a client approaches us and decides to buy something from my collection, he would intangible value am I giving them? So if she decides to buy a jewelry from one of my collections, she knows that she's supporting these crafts. Or she buys something from the other collection, it appeals to her on the sensory level. So that is the value I'm giving them. And so the first project that I would like to share with you is was from 2014. It's a share a seed concept. It is basically a portal where you put in your seeds. It's installed in a community, and when you so the concept behind it is that whenever you have plants at home, you usually have surplus seeds. So if I have a tulsi plant, I have extra seeds. I put it in a paper, I fold it up, and I put it in this portal for someone else who wants to plant these seeds. So it's like a sharing platform for seeds and for gardening lovers. Because the idea behind it is that if you go out for a walk and you feel, oh, this is a really nice creeper and I want this plant, and there's a portal over there where you can actually grab hold of these seeds and plant it at home. So that was the concept behind it. I sent it out for the Core 77 Design Awards, and it won a notable mention in the DIY category. And that is one more thing that you do when you don't have money. That's my dad over there modeling for my product. And so the main idea behind this was to send a positive vibe and this promote this environment of gardening. And if you want, you can actually put in your block number or address, or you want to keep it anonymous, you can keep it anonymous. So if I pick up a seed and I say this is from this block, and I go to their place and I can actually see the plant at their home, and they can share information about watering it and taking care of the plant and things like that. So the concept was, this was also a classroom project, I would say, from LAD in 2014. We participated in the Indian International Jewelry Week. It was called SICCA, and the collection was on antique coins. Now you'll have a better idea when I complete the presentation that I usually work with a backstory. So the story behind antique coins is that I'm sure n number of you have heard so many stories that go around coins. So I feel it's a very culturally diverse and a very simplistic form. So you hear stories about flipping the coin in the fortune well, or you hear stories about keeping mementos like coins as a keepsake, or giving it to someone for that this souvenir would take care of you. So there are these stories around these products, and I thought it will be a good product to make a jewelry out of. And this was actually my graduation project, ARC. So ARC basically means essence in Hindi. So it has the essence of 3 crafts. It has ajrak, which is a block printed fabric textile, and wood. So carved wooden blocks. Blocks are basically stamps that you use to print these fabrics, and silver. So when I was working with Dhruv Singh on this graduation project, he was planning to diversify into jewelry. And the reason why he was already working with garments, and the reason why I suggested ajrak to him was because he had already worked on a collection with ajrak fabrics. So there is a notion there, that when you work with a craftsman, and when you move on to the next collection, then you have to make something new, because people want something new in the market. So then you have to work with a different craft, and in the third collection you work with a different craft. So you don't give repeat orders to the first craftsman unless and until you get a very specific order for that piece. So I wanted to give repeat work to the first craftsman, and that is why I told him that you are left with a few fabrics of ajrak, and let's put that into jewelry, because ajrak in itself takes about 14 rigorous steps of printing, dyeing, resisting, washing it again, and then reprinting it. So 14 steps, and I think it's a precious material that you can actually put in a piece of jewelry. So so that happened, and these are a few images of the products that we actually make. So if you see the semicircular piece over there, the wooden block is hand carved, and on the top left and right square, those are ajrak fabrics mounted in silver. Okay, so 2016 was when I was when my jury got over. I convocated in Jan, and Dhruv was actually generous enough to share this collection with me, because I was working on a graduation project, and he said we'll launch it together. So we launched this collection together, and there was a hunt that we started for the right craftsman, because we didn't want to compromise on quality. And if you enter the market, people are not willing to work on small quantities in silver. So initially, I would say there's a story. Initially, the very first craftsman that we were working with, he would, give us a lot of excuses, and I'm going to do it, and he wouldn't deliver on time. He was not making the pieces on time unless you sit on his head. So it was, and I was straight out of college, and I wanted to change the world. So I thought, maybe he has a very genuine excuse, and I'll give him another chance, and then another chance, and another chance. And finally, after a month or two, he said, I'm ready with 6 pieces, and it's going for polish. I said, wow, now I can actually see how they look. So he said, uh, actually, I've given it for polish, and after a day or two, he said, the polish guy, he has gone out for a holiday to Mount Abu, and his assistant left the pieces in acid, and the pieces have dissolved in acid, and he has drained it in the drain. And I said, what? And I'm still to date, I don't know whether he was lying, because I never got to see the pieces. So there are times like these that you have to detach with people who do not fall with your synergy. And then the hunt continued. We looked for more pieces, more craftsmen, and finally it was in 2017 that I don't know if she's online. My friend Anshula, she suggested that a guy who could deliver us the right kind of quality. So I mentioned value for designer is that this project creates the kind of value for the designer I was working with, is that I'm adding a new market to his existing business. So there's a new domain he's entering, so garments and now jewelry. And also the fact that we are repurchasing from old craftsmen is creating a nice, very warm bond between the craftsman and the designer, because he's giving him repeated work. And we also went up to the craftsman and said, if you have dead stock and it's in small quantities and nobody's buying it, so we'll buy it, because we just need small pieces in the jewelry. So we can make use of those pieces that he will not be able to sell, because they sell long thans, they sell huge quantities of fabric. So nobody's going to buy 1.5 meter or something. So that was a value that this project created. For the wooden block maker, he was very professional. What I wanted was that these wooden blocks are basically, now if you see, these wooden blocks are basically tools for printing the fabric. So, but they are so minutely and so painstakingly done. I felt it was a precious material that you can put in a piece of jewelry. And they were really ecstatic, when I mentioned it to them that we're going to mount it in silver and it's going to be a jewelry. So the thing that happens with these wooden blocks is that these stamps are very durable. So once you purchase a stamp from them and you print a fabric, it goes on for years and they don't get repeat orders on it. So with these jewelries pieces, that every piece that we sell, we are giving them repeat orders. And the good thing about this thing is also that when they're making a block of, they have like 10 motifs on it, so they just charge for that block. But now if they're making 10 flowers for us, he is able to charge us for each of those flowers. And I also made it a point that I would want to pay them slightly more than the market rate. So because the market rate is not fair, and I felt you have to, there's also this incentive that they work on our pieces, they're trying out something new out of their comfort zone, because they're cutting these blocks and they're cutting out these pieces from the blocks, something new that they were doing for us. And so finally, after the project, I actually sent the craftsmen the document that we worked, my final graduation project, and they were so ecstatic that there's a book written on them. So these are the pieces. You can have a look at them. On the right side, there's a brooch. The left side is a ring. The ring on one side, you see this wooden block with silver flowers in it. On the other side, that's not visible, but it has ajrak fabric on the other side. And so basically, and also there have been some amazing incidents that we came across, some amazing clients actually who wanted to support our pieces. So there was this couple that came up to us and said, we're going to get married and we want to buy these pieces. And she bought this brooch you see in the center. She said, can we put a chain around it and wear it as a pendant? I was like, yeah, fine. Of course, there's a hook. There are 2 hooks at the back and you can wear it as a... So they put a chain around it. They put a thread around it. And they said, you have no idea what this is going to be. This is going to be my Mangal Sutra. And we were overwhelmed. We said, wow, you love it so much. And she herself is actually a fashion designer running a very successful brand, and she works with Ajrak. And she loved the fabric so much that she wanted to buy this jewelry. And the ring that you see on the left side was actually secretly purchased from us by her fiance to gift it to her later on. So and then this happened. So basically, Ingliscia line is was so you see the previous collection was a collaboration with Dhruv. That was my graduation project. So and Ingliscia line is basically about, this was my first independent project, that I was working on forms and garment fabrics from Uttar Pradesh, Banaras basically. And Ingliscia line is actually the name of a street in Banaras. So English is basically that relates to English people. So it has a colonial reference there. And they call it Englishia because of the local dialect over there. So I thought that's a very interesting blend of a colonial past and local dialect. And I wanted this collection to be a representation of that. So a lot of times, what you see with jewelry and jewelry is that you see tribal silver jewelry and you know it's from Rajasthan, and that is really popular. You've seen those forms, you've seen the silver jhumkas and baju buns and things like that. But a lot of other regions have some really interesting things to offer. So Uttar Pradesh actually has these anklets and these hair clips, these forms of jewelry that you've not seen so much in the mainstream. So I wanted to work with these local techniques and see how I can put them in the forefront of the main market. So these are a few images. The pieces are handloom. They're natural dyed, handmade techniques on it. We actually, so on the right side, if you see near the neck, there's a line that goes, and so what happens there, it's drawn thread embroidery. So the fabric is flat and you pull the threads out of the fabric. So there's a gap over there, and then you start stitching. So you make this pattern over there. So there's a jali sort of a thing that is created, that is all hand done. So I was working with these minute techniques, and we were getting a lot of appreciation at that point of time. Now, there was one more thing that I realized, that when you enter the field, there's a lot of notion breaking that you have to do, because it's not easy, I must say, for a newcomer to go into the field and do business, especially girls, because guys can go up to the craftsmen, sit with them, have tea, and stay late in the night in the streets, go to these dingy workshops, but I cannot afford to do that all the time. So imagine going to Uttar Pradesh, a girl going to a craftsman in Uttar Pradesh and telling them, you make these designs for me. So they are not going to trust you. They're not going to take you seriously. They feel you're a student, you're just doing it out of hobby, or you're doing it as a classroom project. So there's not a lot of notion resistance initially, and a lot of notion breaking that I had to do. And I don't blame them completely, because there aren't a lot of designers or girls who actually go up to them and say, hey, I run my own thing and I'm going to give you business and you're going to make money out of it. So it will only change with time. And so a good idea at that point of time is that you work with local existing techniques. So, and I always wanted to do that. So I'll give you an example. A classic example of that is this anklet that you see. Okay, so this technique is already existing there, and I put in my own elements. I don't know if you're able to see it clearly, but I put in my own elements into it, and I said, okay, let's not try and make something completely new. Let's work with something that is already existing. And so silver, as you know, in its purest form is actually soft. So this anklet has no opening. So how do you wear it? So you actually bend it because it's soft. You put your foot inside and you straighten it again. So that's how you wear this anklet. And I feel it's a very smart technique that they're using, but you don't really get to see that a lot in the mainstream jewelry market. So that was one. And then there were hair clips. That is also from this region. Hair clips. That is also one more thing that you do. You have to model for yourself too, when you don't have the money to afford a model. And you see the kind of names that we use for our pieces is also colloquial names. So we want a very South Asian, Indian element coming into the pieces, the way they are shot, but in a contemporary way. not making it very costumey, or making it very, contemporary, yet a traditional hint to it. So you see that the hair clip is called choti hair clip, or it's called, there's the second one you see on the left image, the second one in the center you see, it's like a bale, like a wine. So there are these semicircular elements in it, and it's called Chand Bale, this one. And then there is, on the right side, there's Bayar, which means, Bayar in Hindi means wind, waves, like that. And another element that I picked up was that you see these rings on the right side. You see these kind of forms in India a lot, but you usually see men wearing them. It's a classic Navratna, 9 gemstone, 9 9 diamond sort of a ring that you see, but you don't see a lot of women wearing it. So I wanted like a another version of the very predominant classic form of this Navaratna. And so that's how I made this. Now 2017 was actually a time when we were juggling between 3 collections. So what happened in 2017 February is that I finally found the guy to make the right kind of pieces we want, the right quality, and we were really excited. So we were up and running. So in February, March, April, May, June, we were taking orders, even though we were selling very small quantities, but that really meant a lot to us. And so we were excited, and we were making new pieces, and every new piece that he made, it was delivered good quality. So this was the guy that my friend Anshula mentioned to me. And and then what happens in July 2017? We have GST coming into play. So the goods and service tax actually took us into a complete overhauling of the way we were working, because before that we were working on the things that we were really passionate about. But this is the time when I actually started, and after GST, I actually started taking my work more seriously in terms of a business sense. So because what do you do in GST? You calculate your expenditure and purchases, you calculate your sales, and you see these expenses staring at your face. You know that you're not doing a very profitable business. You like what you're doing, but you're not going to go a long way if you're not making the kind of money that you need to pay your bills. So along the way, we learned a lot of things. We had to change gears. I knew I had to increase production a bit, so that I can make more profits and pay my bills and stay in business, and market myself, reach out to the right kind of people, and with the least amount of expenditure. So, and we didn't even, I would say it's not like we met just difficult craftsmen. We actually met very difficult stores also. So initially we were working with a store who they had great sales, but they wouldn't pay us for 7 months. They would sell the piece and just keep the money with themselves. So they wouldn't give us the money. So that is also a time when you decide to detach with these people. Yeah, I learned it the hard way, but it's a constant learning process. So you have to, there's a gut feeling, you'll have to know who you can trust or you cannot. Okay, and then in May 2019, our very innocent looking anklets made straight in coming straight from Banaras. They were featured in Cosmopolitan magazine in May 2019. So on the right side, you see the model wearing those anklets, a bunch of them. So that we were featured in. So this really gives you, the boost to keep working. Now, when you have that kind of a boost, you want to push your boundaries even further. And this has been a very ambitious project for us. Mehak Dibbi are actually scented pieces of jewelry. Now, I knew that I wanted to, I wanted my piece to appeal to people on a sensory level. So the idea started long back actually, and the idea behind it was that it started with, has a fragrance ever reminded you of a place or taken you back in time? Because we have these nostalgic associations with maybe some a dish that your grandma used to make, and you have that when you smell it, you go back in time. Or a flower, that fragrance that you smell during Holi, a festival, or things like that. So I feel fragrance is a very powerful sensory element that you can use in your pieces. And the idea actually started in 2014 with the Seed Portal. The Seed Portal that I made for the Core 77 Design Awards. So the Mehak TV is actually a tiny version of the Seed Portal that I made earlier in 2014. So those portals were stationary. They were located in a locality, but these pieces could travel. So these pieces, people can actually take these pieces with them while traveling, and while traveling they can put seeds in it and come back home and plant them. So initially I made it in brass because I wanted it to be more affordable, and I wanted people to hang it on their backpacks while trekking and collecting seeds in it. But that didn't work out so well, and finally started making it in silver again. And and even though you can still put seeds in it, the idea evolved into appreciating a fragrance along with its tactile form. So you're not just putting a fragrance inside, you're holding the piece in hand. So if you have elaichi or cardamom inside, you can smell it, but you can actually hold and feel the texture of it. And I'm sure you must have heard of, grandmas carrying their supari with them, or, those areca nuts that they can munch on. You can actually eat it. So so if you put a piece of sandalwood in it, you know how the texture is and how it smells. It's therapeutic. So these were some images. We've just recently launched this collection, and no plants were harmed in shooting these pieces because actually picked it up from the temple offerings they were about to throw away at the temple. So, and not all the pieces have these tiny containers or dibbi in it, because for people who do not want to buy it, just container jewelry, but what you see here is basically the same aesthetic language that you have in the previous pieces. Okay, so that's that, and these are a few of our stockists. So by the end of 2019, we received our first export order, and we were really excited. We sent them the pieces, and we were completely sold out in the first few days of going online on the website. So, and we received some great feedback from them, and sending the pieces to them is another story. It will be a really long story, so maybe I'll share it in some other session. So the feedback is that they said, the pieces were such a highlight and the people loved them, and they said some of the most interesting clients, artists and designers have bought our pieces from them. So I think that is also a real morale boost. So in the bottom, you'll see that there are these are basically banner images used on these websites for our pieces. Ogan.com and Jaipur.com. Okay, so the takeaways from this, I feel you should just hold on to what you feel has potential, because the seed dispenser, the Core 77 Design Award product, was just one of the designs that I had made, and it did not even qualify for my jury, but I knew it had potential, so I had to make it. Even though we had so many incompletes, I said I will give this product a shot, and it worked out. It clicked. So if you're running a business, you need finance. You cannot ignore it. It's not like you're making a great product and you're passionate about it, but you cannot run without money. So basically, you need to strike the right balance between passion and practicality. I feel that is very important if someone's planning to start something on their own. And local production, I would talk about pieces that I got made, like the anklet, like this anklet that I got made from Banaras. It was a good idea because you are giving them money at the grassroots level, and they know it best. The people who have made it, the origin of the product, where it comes from, they know how to make it best. They've been working on it for ages. So it's best to go to the experts and get it made at the grassroots level. So we worked with several states. We work with Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat, Rajasthan, and we try and give them work at the grassroots level and try to make it there and give them work in their hand over there. And I think, and it benefits us too. It benefits us as a designer also. So I think, and then running your label is actually a great idea also, because if you're hit by a pandemic, you always have the option of working from home. That's what I've been doing. And I think now we'll start the session for discussion. And I would also like to gain feedback from you guys. So I have a few things in mind. You can either share it right now, or you can just write to me or just DM me on Instagram. So I would like to ask you: do you have a memory associated with a fragrance, or does Mehak Dibbi as a collection remind you of family heirlooms or souvenirs of tiny containers? Because there are always these stories around tiny container jewelries, how people used to keep religious relics in them or mementos for safekeeping. In fact, even taris is another version of something to safeguard you, and you wear it on your body. So if you put inside it, it opens up, and there are stories of people keeping poison in them also. They used to call it zehar ki kuppi. And so that, and do any of our products remind you of stories or folklores? Because we always work with backstories and we would like to hear them. I think that's that. Bhargav, are you coming backstage? Are you coming on stage?
Hi. Yes. Yes. So, amazing session. Really interesting, and like how, like you shared your journey and your challenges also.
Thank you.
So, I will ask people if they want to ask questions. You
Mhm.
can, like
I can,
anyone in the audience who want to ask questions, you can
yeah,
do raise hand. Okay, we have first question from Mancha.
from Mancha. Mancha, oh.
Mancha, you should click on allow permission so you can come on the stage. Okay, I'll try again.
Thank you so much, Sampurna Das.
Hello.
Yeah,
Hello.
Mancha is here. Yes, ask a question.
Hi, Bhargav. Hi, Supriya.
Hey Mancha, how are you?
I'm good. Loved your voice.
Thank you so much.
It reminded me of our jewelry time also. Prior to Dubai Tara, no doubt. Um, okay, I never imagined and never this thing, the anklets which you're talking about. I have them, and I think it's been passed down to me. And I have a third. I'm the third generation who have got those anklets.
Oh,
And I think they're around 80 to 90 years old. But when I was a kiddo, they
wow.
are actually in our family, and I never knew that it's just concentrated to UP only. So
Yeah,
yeah, that was my
actually, yeah, you don't see these elements everywhere, but I'm sure there are versions of it in other regions also.
true, true, true. So yeah, they reminded me of my anklets, and I really love those things. I just checked them on online also, and loved it.
Thank you so much,
Okay,
Mancha.
one thing actually for you when you went into like Uttar Pradesh, I know being from the state, it's little difficult, but how you actually got to know about the silversmith person and how did you deal them? Because it
Actually,
is
my mom is from Banaras. So
okay,
I keep visiting the place every now and then. I keep visiting my grandma every year. So it is, but I never looked at it in the sense of a market.
okay,
It was always a vacation place for me. So when you're going into different regions, you're dealing with different psychologies
true.
and different kinds of people. Is it really common for them, for someone, a designer, to come up to them and get designs made? No, it is not really common. So it will take time to break that ice. And what it's important to assure them, I feel, that you will give them business, or whatever you're getting made from them. Maybe if they're small quantities, buy it from them completely. Don't say that I'll take it, and if it sells, then I will pay you the money. So then they do not they're not really interested in working for you, because they're
Okay,
moving out of their comfort zone for you. That's a big deal for them.
so okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mancha.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Next, we have Chaitanya. He has two, three questions, but I'll ask, just suggest him to ask one question first,
Okay.
then we'll give chance to others.
Hey Chaitanya.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes, yes, you're
There is
audible.
some background noise from my end. I hope it is not
No. If you're
audible.
clear, you're
Okay,
clear.
fine.
Yeah.
So, first of all, enjoyable session, Sukanya, and I really liked, first of all, your confidence, and secondly, your own excitement about the work and how
Thank you
you
so much.
uh, interacted with the artisans on the ground level. So, that was very interesting to know.
Mhm.
The first thing you asked whether we have any memories regarding any smell and associations with that, right?
Mhm.
So I just want to share with everyone. It might be going to tangent. I just shared one link to a podcast here. So it was about smells. So
Okay.
it basically told us that our olfactory bulb, which holds all the smells, it
Mhm.
develops uniquely to each individual. So, if somebody stays in Kerala, the
Mhm.
smell of fish will be different to them than the
The
smell of
smell
fish
of
to
what will be
smell of
different?
fish. Fish,
Will-
fish.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah,
So,
fish. Yeah.
the smell of fish for them would be percepted differently than to
Mhm.
someone maybe in Madhya Pradesh. So
Mhm.
I find the aspect of smells to be very interesting. So I found that project itself to be very interesting.
Thank you.
So yeah, I have two, three questions. I'll start with the first one. The concept of yeah, let's take the seed one. I really enjoyed that because where you put, even though it was a college project, I think,
Mhm.
it is somewhere where the community is coming together
Mhm.
and, they can access. And I was talking to a researcher in Telangana. They actually told us that a village actually does this practice where everyone pools up their seeds so that
Oh.
one person cannot stock the good variety. So all of them
Oh.
pool their seeds, and then it is distributed to everyone. So this is another. Your take is
Example
another.
of something like that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I really found that interesting because first of all, it is a topic that is very niche.
Mhm.
Not everyone is involved with
Mhm.
gardening and seeds. So I
Mhm.
was fascinated. Any other aspects of these small community things or that you have planned? And for example, how do you, just to take this particular installation that you did, how do you make sure that it is not susceptible to the greed of the community?
Uh, you know, actually, I was actually planning to do like a pilot testing in different areas, different communities, and see how it works out. So but I did not have the production to make these pieces after college got over. I was able to make this because I had the workshop at disposal. So, but I really plan to do this. This was a very ambitious project that I actually plan to, work with maybe the municipal corporation and try and put it in different areas and see how it works. Because you have a perception about a few things, freebies. Everyone likes freebies. So you're putting seeds in it. Everybody's going to take it. So, in what sense are you saying greed would play a factor?
Just the fact that Indians, जितना ज्यादा free मिल जाए उतना अच्छा होता है, and that
Yeah,
is
so
true
they'll
for
grab
everyone.
hold of all the seeds and
Yeah,
not
yeah.
leave it for anyone else.
Because that, I think all the designers, especially in India, need to take this into consideration. Anything you give
Hmm.
as a freebie.
Hmm.
So I'm sure you did not think a lot about it because it was an initial project.
Initial
So
project, but I thought that people who are into gardening, they it's a labor of love for them. So if they are into this, taking care of the plant and sharing those seeds, they'll also be respectful of how others are treating their plants, and they're sharing something very precious with you. So I thought that way they speak a similar mental language and they understand each other on that sense.
um,
So, but if they are taking all the seeds, if they're planting it, I mean, what the hell? There's nothing wrong if they're actually planting them. Okay? So, it just has to be tested. Let's see how it works.
yeah, because in India already has a very strong social fabric, right? But it might be a little dicey in the current situation. So I think if designers can tackle that problem, the community can grow very strong together.
Yes, I think I
And this
need
is one
to.
example of it from your end.
Yeah, I think I'll take care of that feedback. I'll work on it.
Thank you for now.
Thank you.
Next, we have a question from Akshi. She's joining from mobile, so she can't join the stage. She's asking, how did you find clients in the beginning?
Oh, it is very difficult to grab eyes when you're a newcomer. But in a way, we are living in a time of social media where you can put stuff online and people will actually see it, appreciate it. But it is a very slow process, I must say, because there are a few, nice ways of grabbing people's eyes through sponsored ads. I have not done those, but I plan to do it. when we have enough production and we can take in more orders. But for me, there is another way of doing it, is that you can approach PRs. You pay them in a month, and they take the pieces, they style it on celebrities. But I did not want to do that because I wanted people to come to me organically. So all of the people who have bought stuff from me, it these pieces actually resonated with them. They were not on my page because it was just a fancy image for them, or someone or it was advertised to them. They actually liked it. They came to us, and the people who've been following us, they've been following us constantly, and they keep coming back. So you have to wait, and you have to approach stores who sell these pieces. If you're not able to sell them directly, you have to approach stores. They take a percentage of your sales, and then they sell it. The other way to do this is, initially I also put up exhibitions, not completely on my own. My mom was running her own business, and I used to tag along and put my products on her stall, and took feedback from people. And that really works, because when clients are giving you feedback, you can improve on your product. What's working, what's not working, what prices are working, and then you are more confident about your pieces also. So you sell through exhibitions, you sell online through Instagram, that's free. And you can also try those sponsored ads. And once if you are, I would say, if you're doing something from your heart, it really clicks. So in the long run, these people will come to you and ask for your products. They will want to sell your pieces.
Very interesting answer. Like mainly, like much appreciated. Not to say like promote through ads. So you have more genuine like people who are like not followers but more like who connect with your brand. Very interesting. Then we have question from Sampurna. She's asking how challenging has it been to start your own brand, the grassroots stage especially.
I think the way I did share a few stories, but at the grassroots level, I feel you need to study the market before you approach them. You need to know the person, the kind of work that he's doing. Is he really up for experimentation? So when I approach, for say a jeweler somewhere, a jewelry craftsman, sometimes the elder generation, maybe they're already in their comfort zone and they don't want to come, experiment. But maybe their son or someone else are working under him. They feel that they can enter a new market if they're working with me. So there's a gut feeling there when you approach someone. There are blunders. They might you'll completely fail. That might just be the case. But you've got to trust your gut feeling. Try and get something made. Try to understand their perspective also. Once, if he's not able to deliver it on time, you'll have to understand that maybe he did have some problem, and give him another chance. Maybe, let's see. If it doesn't work out, then you can look for someone else.
Nitin, yeah.
Yeah.
Hi,
Hey, hi,
Nitin.
Sukanya. First of all, amazing work. It was a total visual treat.
Thank you.
And I really love the collections of yours, and especially the coins one, where coins have a basic. There are like passages of like mementos of time. You can just travel time through them.
Through coins, yeah.
Yeah, and how things have been there. The my question here was not regarding the coins thing. It was about regarding the smell. As a smell, how did you plan to pick up the right fragrances for a collection? Because this collection, different collections have different things, and smells are like we are mixed. There are so mixed smells around here. And how did you plan to this specific smell or fragrance can be the right to my collection, and how can you invoke that feeling to it?
Okay, so when we sell a product, we give them options basically. So we tell them these are the available fragrances that we have, and you can choose from them. So there's no one constant smell that we're putting in, and we put ether in it. We put a cotton soaked ether inside the piece, ether essential oil, and that's like the purest form because it's an oil form of a fragrance, and it lasts really long. We already tested it, lasts for about 2 to 3 months if you put it for one fragrance. So if you're bored of it, you can just take it out and you can put a new fragrance in it. Whatever you feel clicks with you, you put that fragrance inside and you can use the product.
Okay. But for if you want a specific thing, like like imagine you have a collection that is there, and according to, and since you have been working quite a lot with your Dhruv collection, you're working with Dhruv also. In that kind of scenario, when you want a fragrance to also enter along with your apparel section or this section, how do you plan to put fragrance that are quietly, matching with your collection, and how it resonates with your thinking and what you want with your
If I'm working with a designer, I need to understand his psychology. I see Dhruv is a kind of a designer. He eats, sleeps, drinks cultural Indian culture. It is overwhelming if you look at his work. The massive scale that he imagines things. It is always ingrained in, you smells of loban, and things that you see when a puja is happening. It's a very heady sort of a feeling, that sort of a feeling. So if I'm working for a designer like Dhruv, I would put in smells of loban or google, and incense sticks that he really likes. He loves lemongrass, and yeah. So you have to understand who you're working for, and then it will automatically come to you.
Sure. Thank you.
Then we have Advait.
Hi,
Hey,
Subhadra.
Advait.
It was really lovely to see your work and the way you approached every single project with a backstory. That idea I really like. That having a specific story or emotion attached with your work really makes it stand out and makes it also personal to us. So that I really loved. Yeah, and so my and also the smell one with the smells. The idea behind you know giving emotions through smell, and we don't realize that
How strong and powerful.
yeah. So this was something which really triggered me, that we don't pay attention to everyday smells, but sometimes they generate such emotions and they really last with us for long. So that was really interesting again. So my question was regarding in a project you mentioned you can't really trust every single person you come across, and you have to trust your gut and know when to shift to when to trust someone, when to shift to
And
other
move
people.
on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when to move on. So you also mentioned that you had to search for the right cast people for your projects. So how do you approach that? I mean, there's a wide range of people who do various kinds of crafts and work. How do you find the right match for what you want?
Okay, so again, when you're approaching a craftsman, you need to understand, you need to know a few things about him in advance. And you also have to see what they've already worked on. So, the kind of work they've delivered in the past, the kind of quality that they do, if that really appeals to you. Because, when I was also working with garments, finding the right tailor is a task, because he needs to speak the same mental language that you are speaking, and if it clicks, he understands you, what you want. You are soulmates. If you're working with a craftsman, he understands your mental language, the kind of delivery that is required. It clicks. At times you don't even have to mention. He knows that this is what she's asking for, and this is what the kind of product I should be making for her. So it is with time that you tune these things. And I think I've been really fortunate after working for, like, 2016 was a complete struggle looking for the craftsman. But now I've created a network of people that I'm really happy with. So even if there's just one tailor or one or two craftsmen who are working on silver, person who's working on wood craft, I'll call them up today and they will work for me. And they know that their payments are going to be cleared on time, and so they are also happy working for us.
And they trust you now.
They trust us now, and it comes with time. Initially, a lot of them did not. So with time, you have to see their quality of work. Sometimes they also tweak it for us, and they also fine tune it. They feel if they really want to work on it, they will improve on the products, because what they're working on right now is for the mass market at times. So they really don't pay attention to quality at times. But some of them who are really, really, you cannot say that people working on the grassroots level are not professional, because some of them are real perfectionists. The person I was working with the wood carving blocks, he instantaneously understood what I wanted and he delivered. I did not have to visit him again and again, constantly get things changed, because he knew. And he is really old. He is a 70 He's a 75 plus uncle, and his son also works with him. So, and we still talk, and I even during the pandemic, I talk to them. How are they doing? It's more of a family feeling now, actually, working with these
Yeah.
people.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chaitanya, you have another question?
I have many questions.
Yes.
Chaitanya again.
Yeah. Hi. Just a second. Let me just phrase it right. Yeah. Okay. So the project that you did, where one fashion designer made a Mangal Sutra out of it. What was that craft? I just forgot the name.
It was arc. It had ajrak, silver, and wood in it. All the three
Okay.
crafts
Okay.
together.
So that seems fantastic. It is just you have how you have taken the Indian essence and turned it again Indian.
Mhm. Yeah, but
Neo-Indian.
just giving a new light to it,
Yeah, correct.
new
Would you
approach.
want your work, sorry for that, would you want your work to reach the common man? For now, what you
Mhm.
have made, the designs that you have made, have been appreciated by someone
Mhm.
from the same field, who understands it.
Yes,
And
yes.
there is a certain thought that has gone, and I think as designers, all of us face that. We put a lot of thought, but when
Yeah.
it goes to the masses, it is not received as we would like.
Mhm.
Even
Mhm.
though the design itself is coming from
Mhm.
the culture itself.
Yeah,
Right. Would you
yeah.
want it to reach the common man? Would it be diluted like Fab India? I'm just giving a very crude example because I'm not a part of this world. Would you want it
Mhm.
to become something like that, or would you want it to keep it very niche?
Uh, See, I think that is so true. And when I was starting, see, you have to decide which kind of market do you want to be a part of. So there is one market where you can make tons of pieces, maybe compromise on the quality a bit, but you'll sell a lot, and that's how you make profits. And then there's a market where you do not compromise on quality, and you just, even if you're targeting a very niche market, those are the kind of people who understand your pieces, and they are, even though it increases your prices a bit, but they are happy paying for it. So that's how you make profits. So either you put in your energy dealing with 10 people who understand your things, and then, or maybe dealing with 30 people who do not understand it so much, but they just like it. So that is one decision that you have to make as a designer. And I would say both of the things are really up to you how you decide. And I absolutely agree with you. When I sell, uh, not every client who comes to me is because they want to support a cause or they want to support a craft. It visually appeals to them, the aesthetic value appeals to them. That is why they come to us. Only few of them actually understand the backstory. So it's not like we've not been selling to people who don't understand it so much. We've been selling through exhibitions, and we've been selling to pieces, selling pieces to people who are not designers, so they're not from a design background, but it is from a, like you said, it is from a cultural background that these pieces are coming. So it clicks with them. Even then, they don't need to understand that Ajrak has 14 steps of printing in it. They love the textile. And when I was working with Dhruv on this craft, initially, what happened was when we approached the craftsmen, and I realized it later that I shouldn't have mentioned it to the craftsmen. We told them we're going to put fabric into this, and he said, "You're going to put fabric in this? How are we going to put fabric in this? Are you going to stick it? We just work with gemstones. We've never done this." So there's a lot of resistance when you try to do something new. Okay, so later on, the idea, what I realized, I thought, okay, I'm not going to tell them that I'm going to put a fabric inside it. I'm just going to tell them, you just make the silver casing, you make that silver, basically the container, and forget everything else. I will mount the pieces on my own. And till date, I'm the one who puts those fabrics inside, and I've closed the prongs. And Dhruv and I were very clear that he said, "Can we put a glass over the fabric?" So it's like a photo frame sort of a thing. But we said no, we want people to have that tactile feel of the fabric. So we don't want to put a glass over it, and that is what appeals to our clients. They appreciate the wood. It's an exposed wood. It's an exposed fabric, and not everyone is a designer, but they understand it. They actually understand.
Interesting.
Next, we have Kavya. Kavya, you can ask a question. Yeah.
Hi, Sukha. Hi.
Hi, Kavya.
It was a lovely presentation.
Thank you.
And yeah, I feel so good to hear about Dhruv as well, because I have been personally knowing him from some time, and I know his background, the royal family that he comes from, and and the kind of work he does. So I just wanted to ask that apart from jewelry, have you worked on any other projects on sensory marketing? I mean, smell is definitely such an important stimuli, and it's so simple. Like your products itself are marketing on its own. You don't need a separate marketing agenda or like a template. Your product itself is marketing and standing for what it is. So, but beyond jewelry, have you worked on, I mean, because you are working with sensory marketing, not probably you have not worked as sensory marketing, but you are using senses in your design. So I'm anticipating that you might also have been into conversation about sensory marketing with people. If so, what are your experience and what are the other projects or anything that you have worked around it?
Yeah, actually, we plan to do that because we launched this collection this year during the pandemic, and I've not been able to go out. But I actually want to create an immersive exhibition of people coming in, fragrance, and experiencing it firsthand, not for selling the products, but to gain feedback from people and how they feel about this entire concept. So right now it's in jewelry because I feel it is approachable in the sense that it is handy and you can take it anywhere. But on a larger scale, maybe as an installation, or I'm open to ideas. I mean, I'm open to jump between different products. And I think with time, when we get more feedback from people, we'll approach different products or different markets.
Yeah, so just an extension to this question is that, like sensory marketing is already there. We go to any food stall, we go to any place, we definitely get stimulated first by the smell of it before when we see the product. So what do you think about using in more design centric approach where people are trying to do sensory marketing with a controlled environment versus happening it randomly anywhere and everywhere? What is your opinion about it, or what do you think about it?
I think we can. I feel, see, if you're saying food is also a very interesting market because food in the aroma, the smell, when you smell it, you start feeling hungry. So there are these things. These stimuli are actually they're very important. So if people are already, of course, people are already working on it, and people have different uses. Maybe they don't know that they're actually working on something like this. Like the food stall owner does not know that, but it works. It actually clicks with people. So maybe we can collaborate with people who are already working on something like this. And I would like to share. I actually saw this video by actress Richa Chadda, and she said I actually approach roles by fragrances. So I give a fragrance to a character, and when I smell it, I'm in that character. So if she's doing a movie with some other character, she's playing some other role, so she'll have a different fragrance for that role. So people do it on a personal level, and they do it on a large scale level also. So I feel if you do it in any sense, it's a great idea.
Bhargav, do we have more questions?
I have one question.
Can I explain one? Can you just give me 1 minute? So,
yeah, sure.
So, when we talk about smell, also, like if we have a negative, perception, like for example, someone don't like itchy smell. Okay.
What your voice is cracking?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
What I'm asking, that smell is such a strong stimuli, and there is also a bad side to it. Meaning that, suppose if I don't like elaichi smell, or if I don't like cardamom, any other lemon
smell, yeah.
So it might create a negative imagery about the whole product itself, that it will not let me
not appeal to you. Yeah.
The company again. In that scenario, what do you think? Is it how careful a designer should be in working with sensorial marketing? or sensorial design?
Yeah, I think that is a very important question, because that is why we give people the option of changing the fragrance. So basically, you can open it and clean it up, and you put the fragrance that you like. It's very important, not just for this product, but in whatever project that you're working on, that you cannot force things on people. You have to give them an idea. This is what we are working on, and you take it the way you want. You cannot, and there is no fixed formula for it either. That, something that appeals to me may not appeal to you. So it has to be slightly open ended, in a controlled way. Slightly open ended. You give them the material, you give them the things, and now that's the place where DIY comes into play. So my seed dispenser was a DIY thing because people were involved in it. It's really up to them how they use it, what they put in it. So it's the same way that they put in Mehak Dibi. It's really up to them how they put in it. Or they do not want to put a fragrance in it, just put elaichi and eat it if you want. Keep it empty for that matter. If it appeals to you visually also, that's great.
So my question is that these are very interesting ideas, and I think you have executed in the best possible form.
Thank you so much, but I am still working on it.
Yeah.
To improve on it if we can.
Sure. I hope it will keep improving, and it will be like an interesting journey. But
Thank you.
do you do you hear back from people who buy a fragrance jewelry or like a seed container thing? Do they use it? What is the longevity of its use? How you have thought about it?
Yeah. Okay. So as I mentioned, we've recently launched the collection, but what I can tell you is that we have started selling the pieces, and the feedback is great. So a client, she responded, she received the pieces, and she said, so I put the smell of so I gave her a few options, and she selected a flower called Bela flower, and she liked that fragrance, and she messaged me back, and she said, this design is brilliant. It really, really appeals to me. And so these are the things when you know that maybe you're hitting the right chords, and waiting for more feedback from you guys too, so that we can improve upon the product and take it ahead.
Right. Very interesting. Anyone else has question or just want to share something? You can type it in chat or click on the raise hand button. Meanwhile, we can ask Chaitanya. He has one more question.
All right, Chaitanya,
People
what do
will
you?
kick me out, dude. Don't make me so
Chaitanya
many
is
questions.
constantly on the stage now.
I actually forgot what I wanted to ask.
It's okay. Take your time.
Just give me a second. Somebody did ask a question. They can move forward first.
Yes, I'll try to get the person on stage.
Yeah. So can I, Bhargav, are you
Wait, there is someone who has asked. I sent them invite to come on stage and ask. Yes, someone called Millennia from Chennai. Okay, she's a I don't know, he or she. The question is,
Just idealizing aesthetics, only the designing aspect. I didn't quite get the question completely. So are you trying to say that we are idealizing designers? The aesthetic value of a product? Is that what you want to say? I'm not sure. Millennia, can you just clarify the question?
can you add more to the question? Okay, by the time he or she adds, Kavya, you can ask your question, what you were asking.
No, I was just, I don't know if it's a question. Bhargav, I think there's a lot of echo. One of us has to. Yeah. So it's not a question, but I really like the fact that what I mean, Chaitanya also tried talking about it. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
where one side we see something like Fab India, which is like really gone big, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and one side we see all these niche, different small little studios doing their own work. And I
Mm-hmm.
see that the creative industry itself, like another fashion designer becomes your client. Like the business revolves around in the same circuit, like uh,
Okay, yeah,
you have
I get your point.
explained. So, do you think that as now how people are becoming more creative? Everyone wants to be creative. Everyone wants to see things
Start their own thing. Yeah.
and start their own thing, and everyone is a designer today
Mm-hmm.
in
That's
the
true.
yeah, in whatever capacity they
Mm-hmm.
can. Uh,
Yeah.
and you also mentioned about DIY. So connecting all these angles or elements, how do you see the creative industry becoming your own target segment or your potential segment, or how does it like work?
Okay. Um See, one more reason for us not getting into a mass market was because we never, our techniques were so handmade that we weren't able to produce too many pieces. Now we are trying to slightly scale up, and hopefully in future we will, try and approach as many people as we can. And of course, there are designers, it clicks with them first because they understand the craft and they are more sensitive towards it. But other people also who are not from a creative background, it's not like they don't understand it. They like it and they are ready to spend for it. But I think, yeah, we are trying to scale up. Let's see. Maybe through collaborating through a store or something like that. We are, because we, a lot of handmade things are happening in this, so it takes a lot of time, and we're not, taking out a lot of pieces. It's just not possible for us right now.
And on a personal note, like, what is your opinion? Like, you can share your personal opinion. That is it really important to touch upon the mass market to really create an impact that people keep talking about, or can we do things in small quantity and small segment, but do it very holistically, or do it in such a way that you know each and every part of it? Because from your talk, I can figure out that you really try thinking in system, you try giving them repeat orders and so many things like that, right? So what is
Yeah.
your opinion, like, or can we say that how many such people do you find in the industry where they try doing small little thing and they are happy with it, their content, and they feel that they are creating impact by even targeting the small segment or niche segment, because the niche segment can reach out to many then
Yeah.
necessarily directly with their products, but
You
as
know, I think personally speaking, personally on this, I have been actually very fortunate that I had I borrowed money from my parents, of course, but I did not have the pressure to run a house. So I'm living with my parents, and whatever money I'm earning from the business goes back into the business. So that is why I can afford to take these decisions. A person who needs to run a house, he needs to have the kind of profits so that he can pay bills, pay personal bills also, not just business bills. So, personally speaking, I feel I've been fortunate that I was able to make these decisions. And, there was a time when I was doing garments and jewelry together, and I realized there are a lot of other sustainable designers too who are, they're working with great garments. So, why should I make another garment for the industry, which is, slightly similar to what they're already doing? So that's when I decided that the garments have to take a backstage right now. And even though we are taking customized orders, we natural dye them and they're handloom only, but we're solely concentrating on jewelry for the time being. And I have this, I'm fortunate to take this decision because I don't have to run a house. I can, if I feel it is not relevant for the market, it doesn't appeal to me, it doesn't make sense today, I can shut it down immediately. So I feel I've been fortunate that way, that I can take these decisions and just work with a niche market for the time being. And if you have see, this is one thing that I faced when I was in college also. That they used to ask, "Who are you targeting?" And I used to think, I want to make it for everyone. I want everyone to buy it. But then they used to say, you know, even if you want it to sell to everyone, you have to target someone. You know, you have to have a client image in mind and then make it. If others also like it, that's a really good thing. They will also come along. But first you'll have to appeal to the people who you're making it for, and who speak the same mental language like you do. So if they understand, it clicks with them, it's great, and others will also come in. They do I've realized that along the way there are more people coming in, and there are a lot. Initially people they did not understand hair clips. We were making it in 2016, and now it's clicking with people. So a lot of stylists are approaching us, and they want to pair it up for their shoots. The pieces have gone out to like 3 or 4 stylists right now. So it is gaining momentum.
Thank you. I think now we have.
Yes, we have, like Millennia has elaborated on the question that just my view that many startup people focused on making aesthetic only the core element despite the other functional aspect, mostly a trend driven. Isn't it the responsibility of the designer to think of this in the long run, create a timeless style rather than just short lived trend?
Yeah, exactly. So that is what we are working on. That is why my work is not driven by trends. I want to make a lasting product that people keep wearing again and again, and they don't feel it's outdated. That is also a case with jewelry. That jewelry it doesn't look outdated for a really long time, you know, unless and until you're working with a very specific fad. Like if you're working with, for example, neon enamel jewelry, so it would seem nice when it's in trend, but after a while you may not feel like wearing it. So that is why I want to work with traditional techniques and traditional looks, a contemporary way of the traditional things, so that it lasts longer. And that is why I don't focus on making a lot of collections in a year. I just when it appeals to me, I make it. That's it.
Next is we have Vaibhav Vivek. You can ask your question, Vaibhav. I think he has network issue. Yeah. Are you there, Vaibhav?
Hi Sukanya, how are you?
Hi, Vaibhav. How are you? I'm good.
Yeah, so my question is about the forms that you have depicted in the presentation. They were like, I have never studied jewelry as per se, but they were very provocative to see because
They are very
in
what
the
to say?
provocative, like it was really new for
Okay.
me.
Okay.
So I have typed that question in the chat as well. Like, how do you go about exploring novelty of forms, especially in an industry which is full of experimental forms? And secondly, the example where you with the silver, soft silver, like it was an example of form and function with like blending in quite
And it was
in
an
a.
existing technique in that region. Yes.
Okay, okay. Yeah, so that's my question. I want to know more about the explorations of forms
Okay.
in
So
industry. Like,
if you see, I'll just share the screen with you. If you look at 1 second. Yeah. So if we are working with, for example, when I was working on Arc as a collection, you see these forms have actually come out of motifs of the textile. So Ajrak has these you see there are these geometrical forms, these flowers. There's a combination of, they work with jals basically. So there's a combination of floral and geometrical patterns. So that is how the forms developed. So basically, when you see a semicircle, they have semicircular and circular prints, and then they have these flowers coming out of the pieces. So that is how we approach the forms. And of course there's definitely a personal aesthetic in it. You cannot deny that. So if I have You take a few things, you take a few elements from the concept, and but no matter what you do, your personal aesthetics will come into play. So that is how we approach forms. Okay. So I hope that
I
answers your
think
question.
like personal
Thanks,
aesthetic
Sonia.
is also like a art style, right? Like it is also interesting to see like when you have range of products or things that you make, you can see the designer's involvement inside that.
Mhm.
So that is also interesting.
Yeah, because you have a certain language,
Yeah.
and when your client comes to you, that language appeals to them. So they keep coming back because they know, because they like your language, basically. So they would keep coming back to you because it clicks with them, basically.
Next we have Vasudha.
Hi Sukanya.
Hey
Thank you for the
Vasudha,
presentation.
thank you for that beautiful artwork that we
Thank you.
for Polygonal.
Thank you. So my question was, I wanted to ask you, what was the biggest challenge you faced when you started your venture, and like, do you see a shift in space, design space, from when you started to how it's now? I mean, the people more talking about it, and government also making more initiatives like local to vocal and make in India. Do you feel there is a shift in that? And is it so? Yeah.
Yeah, I think initially one of the biggest challenges was production. For me, it was production because you have an idea on paper, it sounds great, but how do you get it done from people? Getting work done from someone else is the biggest task. And does it translate the way you imagined it to be? It doesn't. They put in their own elements in it and they feel ये अच्छा लग रहा है, so let's do it. So they will not agree with you completely, and at times you have to go with the flow. At times you pick up things from you. It's not a one-way process. It's not like we are dictating the craftsmen. They know better. They know the market better. They know whether it's practical, it'll work or not. So you've got to learn from them also. You've got to change your designs slightly if this is not appealing. If it's breaking along the process, the handmade jewelry, you have to cast some parts of the jewelry, and maybe the back clasp of the hair clip is handmade, but the front portion is casting because if initially we were hand making it and it was breaking. So it doesn't work. And what was your other question? I'm sorry. Yeah, the government taking initiative into vocal for local. So yeah, that is actually, yeah, it does resonate with people. Some things like that, it does, but that is not the only thing. These campaigns, they work, but there are other market forces that come into play. So like there was GST, there was demonetization, and is there enough cash flow in the market for people to spend on these pieces? When the lockdown happened in March, April and May, we were completely shut down. And at that point of time, I kept questioning myself what I was doing, whether it was relevant or not. I didn't feel like posting stuff, and I did not want at that point of time, I did not want to ask people, hey, you buy my jewelry, because there are bigger things happening in the world. So you have to be sensitive towards that also. But when the market opened in June, and the kind of feedback that we started getting for our pieces, it was really overwhelming, because the Mehak Dibis clicked with people, and when they feel happy buying your stuff, because people were so gloomy during the lockdown, and when they bought those pieces and they were happy and they said, this is brilliant, and they feel nice and confident wearing it, and so that is also a very important value that you're translating to your client.
Yeah. Thank you.
Next is Sarthak.
Hi Sukanya.
Hey Sarthak, how are you?
I am good. How are you?
I'm good.
Yeah. First of all, amazing work. Really loved how you've translated all the emotions and all the through your forms and everything. And I could really resonate with how all the form courses that we learned in LED are being put to use, like judiciously put to use.
Which you passed out, or you are still? Which year are you in?
I'm from 19 batch, so I'm in my second year.
Okay, all right. So you've been through a lot.
yeah, just getting over with the form and culture. So I could definitely resonate with what you were trying to put there. So yeah, one of my questions was that when dealing with jewelry and in general in design, when you have your own brand, so how do you balance between being a designer and also being a business person? Because a lot of things can, you know, be very
They
contrasting.
can bomb. Yeah, they may not work. Yeah.
So how do you balance that? How do you, when you tell yourself, you know, this is the time I want to be a designer, this is the time I want to be a business person, and this aspect, how do you do that?
It is a constant on and off jumping process, because, and I think it is not just true for designers. When you're doing business, even if a local kirana guy is doing business, if you're doing business, you're taking risk.
Yeah.
Okay, he will buy things, he'll put it in stock, but he's not sure if he's going to sell all the products. So he may just be left with some dead stock. So there is always a gut feeling that you have to be business minded also, and you have to see what worked in the past, and make more of those pieces. Like when we were making the hair clips, we realized that the pieces with the chains were working really well, and the ones without chains were not working so well. So in the next collection, we knew that we have to make more of those, so that from the business point of view, we are making more money, but we're not compromising on the designs either.
Right.
So it's a constant. You don't have to do it consciously. It just comes to you. When you're in a situation, you are questions come up to your mind if you're in a situation like that.
Yeah.
So when you're designing, you have to see, okay, yeah, this is working. You have to study the market. If hoops are in, hoop earrings are in.
Yeah.
So you see a hoop earring in our Mehak Dibbi collection also. Yeah. So if that clicks, that will also sell, and maybe they come to your page looking at it, but then they buy something else.
Yeah.
So that also happens, that they approached our page, but now they like something else. This is more interesting, so they'll go to that, and then that this thing is working more, or that is working. Instagram actually gives you these insights on your page that this post is doing better than the others and other stuff. So you have to read about it.
Right. And that's interesting. Also, one more question. Like, what I realized is that when you talk about creating garments, then there's definitely a trend that you study, and you realize what people are gravitating towards. But with jewelry, it's very personal, and you need to find your own niche market which you want to cater to, and create
Stay true to it.
around that. Yeah, stay true to it.
Yeah.
So do you ever feel the need to really look into other brands, or maybe not other brands, but in general see what's trending in terms of forms or maybe certain motifs or anything? Because the kind of brand that you have, I don't think there's you can study a global market. It's more about the Indian aesthetics and stuff. So just sticking to India and the culture that's prevalent here. So how do you do that? Like, do you really refer to some sort of trends?
Yeah, you have to see what's working. You have to, if there are you have these sponsored ads coming in, even if you're not studying, what's happening in there,
Right.
what's selling, what's not. These brands have so many followers, so obviously they're selling more and things like that. So I'll tell you one thing, when we exported for the first time, it was to a website, thirdedit.com. So now you're working on a global scale when you're exporting. Okay. So, and thirdedit.com they have a very intimate representation, and I would say they've made it with their whole heart. They have a very intimate representation of South Asian culture, but they are very contemporary and global in their representation.
Right.
So they are representing South Asian cultural designs and designers, but with a global appeal. And when we sent out our pieces to them, it was completely sold out. So now we know that it is Indian, but hey, it works globally too.
Yeah.
So we are putting front these designs. When I was working in North India with those these anklets and hair clips, they were not in the forefront. So since it's gaining momentum now, I hope people can after a while, if it's not selling, it will be dead. These techniques will be dead, and people are not buying it. It'll just be a souvenir for people. But since we have started selling these, and we are giving them more work at the grassroots level, so they also feel that it's working out. So we'll make more of these next time. And you see these magazines like Cosmopolitan and people featuring these pieces. So now they are catching people's eye. So
Right.
I think it's working slowly.
Right. Thank you so much, and good luck with the brand.
Thank
Hopefully
you.
many more amazing designs from you.
Thank you, Sarthak.
We have a last question, perfectly to end the session. When you have started working, you must have faced many problems. So how did you keep yourself motivated or keep going?
You have to constantly do it. You have to, it is, there have been times where initially I was working when I was working with the garments, the tailors, they ruined the fabrics completely. And I thought maybe, yeah, this is the tailor who's going to make it, and then it bombed completely. It was a blunder. He said, my good karigar had gone, and now I had to just get it done from some local guy, and this is what I made. I was like, why did you even make it? Why did you spoil the fabric? If you are not able to do it, just tell me I'm not able to do it. So there have been very difficult times where I felt really down, and I felt, I don't know if it's going to work out or not. But these concepts, they keep you going. Responses from clients, when you see that it's working in the market, and you feel, that's when that really keeps you going. There are ups and downs. There are ups and downs in every business, and you also start questioning the designs of whether this is really happening or not. But then it's a complete different mood after a while when you gain good response and good sales. So you have to be on it.
Great. So wonderful session. I think Kavya will give us summary, like concluding note. Yeah. Yes, Kavya. Your mic is off.
Bhargav, summary sounds like a very formal session.
Yeah. I by mistake said it. I wanted to say concluding.
Yeah, we promised each other to make it informal. But anyways, thank you, Sukanya. It was really lovely session and a very good start for a Sunday. I mean, I think Polygon is becoming the next virtual Kocha. We all in the campus so much. And now seeing so many known faces, my batchmates, seniors, juniors, so many people, it really feels nice. And I really like the way how you use sensorial design in appealing to a larger human audience. I mean, many times we forget that we are designing for humans, and you really take that into account. And one thing which I feel very inspirational is that the way how you started your presentation with your classroom projects, and then later on how you showed the journey of becoming a brand. I mean, the seed definitely gets planted there when you question everything that we learn in the college and then try exploring yourself. And then when the right opportunity comes, because opportunity comes in everyone's path, everyone's way, and how you apply that and then try to build something of your own, that's a very fascinating journey. And I really appreciate you that you are thinking so much in systems, and in whatever way possible you were trying to give back to the society, and with every aspect you were trying to question all what you could do with your design. That's really appreciable.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for joining us here. And we'll again see the next Polygon session next Saturday and Sunday. So stay tuned and let's keep it informal and best. And lovely seeing you all.
Thank you, Sukanya. Thanks a lot. It was wonderful.
Thank you guys for organizing this.
Yeah, a lot of people are sending thumbs up emoticons in your talk. You would have noticed.
Yeah, emoticons, and also do follow Sukanya.
Yeah.
Actually, marketing me now.
You don't want to promote. People will discover it.
Let her market. Okay?
Just a reminder.
Yeah. Okay. I think we can end it. It's perfect. 1.5 hours. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. I hope it was worth your time.
It was great. Bye.
Bye-bye.